We're back to KJ and Lyons on WEEI.
Let's put the Patriot Way to bed. It was the Tom Brady way. Cincinnati wins now. Why? Joe Burrow. Kansas City dominates the AFC. Why? I love Andy Reid, but it's Patrick Mahomes. It was the Brady way. Proximity to greatness, and I've said this before, does not equal greatness. Many of Belichick's assistants and coordinators have been the league's biggest busts. Joe Judge, Matt Patricia. And none of Brady's backups or coordinators are running the league. Proximity is mostly nonsense. I mean, Phil Jackson, where's his great coaching tree? Bill Belichick, look at his coaching tree. Basically, they both had an all-time great player.
Oh, the leads. KJ and Lyons, WEEI, 617-779-7937, text line 37937. John, I have to say this. That's Colin Cowherd going off on a spiel, more like a clocking spiel, if you will. Okay, the Patriot Way is really three tenets. It is do your job, manage expectations, go all in for team. That doesn't have to do with Tom Brady. That has to do with the team. So when I hear people say, or pundits say like, oh, the Patriot Way is dead, it's like, what? People aren't doing their jobs? No, if you don't have as quality of people overall on the team, the job is going to be harder. But I'm not going to say that people aren't doing their job. That's the craziest thing. I don't know. I have a lot of friends of mine who they've never been north of New York. And they're like, how is Boston? And before I can tell them how Boston is, they're already saying 5 things. I'm like, well, damn, if you ain't been there, how can you tell me 5 things? Yeah. This is the narrative I don't get.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Yeah, a quick correction, KJ. Terry McLaurin was taken in the 3rd round. Before I could even correct that, we had somebody text in right away. Yeah, they did take Jahan Dotson in the 1st round.
That's who was the first round guy they took.
Yeah, and Terry McLaurin, I guess, technically was the 13th pick, just in the 3rd round. So
13th round.
Yeah,
so
before I could even correct
3.
that, we had a Washington fan texting in asking me what I was talking about. So
well, that's why they're in the text line.
Yeah,
right?
Appreciate the text.
Apply for the job.
But the guy, he is right. He is right. Terry McLaurin was 3rd round pick. But yeah, look. I think your point about the Patriot Way, like what are the tenets of it, they're still there, but I think it's become clear over the past few years that the most important piece of the Patriot Way was Tom Brady. And what I mean by that is when you have not just the best player on your team, but the best player in the history of the sport fully buying in and doing all those things,
right,
then everybody else falls in line. It's like the classic thing, like in an organization, the first follower is just as, if not more important than the leader, because without the first follower, no one else is going to follow, and the leader's just, out there by himself. So Tom Brady was that key. Like, if you're a guy, pick any free agent you want that's come here over the years, or anybody they've drafted. I mean, if you're Stephon Gilmore and you walk into a meeting room and you see Tom Brady getting lit up, well, then you're going to just fall in line when you get lit up on film or something. Like, so I think that's the thing. Like, are the tenets of it still there? Sure. But the talent isn't there, which is the most important piece. But close second is, when you have a player of that caliber buying in, and it goes beyond Brady, too. Guys like Bruschi, Will Fork, all these guys who were great players, but then also bought into what the program was about, because it's not an easy program to play for. That's what gets you the other 50, 51, 52 guys to buy in. And when you add talent on top of that, that's why you're the best team in the league for 2 decades.
Well, yeah, and the other part of it is if you manage expectations. I think that's the stage that, the fan base is in right now. Is like, how would anybody believe that this team would be a double-digit win team within the last 2 years? No. Last 3 years? No. You knew that was no longer going to be the case. Even Tom's last year here, that was very arduous. I'm pulling a Breslow. It was very arduous and demanding.
You're right, though.
Extrapolating from the soul. That was a good one, wasn't it, right?
Yeah, no, but it really was. I mean, because remember he said I'm the most miserable 8-0 quarterback in the history of the league. And then they went, 4-4 down the stretch to finish 12-4. They lose a wild card game. Remember even Edelman dropped a pass in that. Like, just weird stuff happened, and it really kind of felt like the end for most of the season, too. He even put his house on the market before the season started.
Exactly.
And, he had the no franchise provision in the contract. Like, it was, you're right. I mean, that was a weird year. And since he left,
the stories of Giselle looking for schools in Tennessee for the kids and stuff like all that stuff. Yeah,
but I think like in the last few years, and look, I've been a Patriots fan my whole life. I never expected them to, sleepwalk their way to 10 wins like they could do under Brady. Not that they ever really sleptwalk, but just that they could wake up and, hey, we're going to have 10 wins this year at least. I didn't expect that to be the same, but I think in fairness, KJ, when you go 10-7 in 2021, I think it was reasonable to expect in 22 and 23 that you were going to keep at least being in that playoff, like winning records, whether it be 9-8, whether it be maybe squeak into 10-7. And last year they were in the playoff hunt at the end of the season, but they still ultimately had a losing record. Now they're 2-6. Like even without Tom, this is below what the expectation should be.
Yeah, Steve and Franklin, thanks for calling KJ and Lyons on WEEI. You're on the air.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
You, Steve.
Hey, here's the deal. If I'm the Chargers, Colin Cowherd hit the nail right in the head, what you guys played, right? If it's Brady, it's Mahomes, then you need a good coach to make it all happen, to finish it off. If I'm the Chargers, I offer the Patriots first-round draft pick for Bill Belichick. They say no, I give them 2 first-round draft picks. If they say no, I make them an offer, to quote Marlon Brando, I make them an offer they can't refuse. You put Belichick with that kid Herbert, and they're in every single AFC championship or thereabouts. They're hunting. They ain't hunting with this kid out there, that coach. Not happening.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for the call. So, John, he brings up something interesting because obviously there was conversation this week about Belichick potentially being traded to the Commanders. And here's the thing that I think people have to understand about Belichick is he really looks towards the trajectory of Paul Brown. Paul Brown, who's the founder of the Browns, fired by the Browns, went and got him from a franchise in Cincinnati, created the Cincinnati Bengals. So if Belichick is going to go out, he's going to go out an owner, right? So you can't tell me that, hey, we're going to trade Belichick, say, to the Chargers, and he's just going to be a coach. If Belichick is going anywhere else, there is going to be ownership stake for him to be there. So would he potentially be part of an ownership group and still the coach and GM? Maybe Washington could offer that, but there's just so much you'd have to offer that what Steve is talking about is go get a veteran quarterback if you don't believe in the quarterback you have now.
Yeah, and Jones and Mego talked this week about Belichick maybe following that Red Auerbach model where he stopped coaching in 1966, but then for 3 decades was an executive kind of pulling the strings, building teams. And I could see him maybe doing something like that, but I think first and foremost, like even if the Patriots want to move on from him, he's still going to want to coach, I think, after this year. And the Chargers are interesting, but to me, the 2 at the top of the list should be Washington and Dallas. Like Dallas, to me, the caller talked to Stephen Franklin about, they'd be in the AFC Championship game every year, and they might be close to it. Maybe they would be in it several years. If you put a good coaching staff with that Dallas Cowboys roster, I mean, how many times have we seen them fail because
and make Bill part owner? Will Bill be part owner?
Well, Jerry Jones wouldn't allow that.
Okay, that's the poison pill, right?
Football sense-wise, but who knows? Maybe Stephen Jones says, "Hey, Jerry's not going to be the owner in 10 years. We'll let Bill be part owner." Who knows how that
maybe they do it in Washington. Bill's from the Indianapolis area, right? Right, because you kind of already have kind of an accessible ownership group. Magic Johnson's part of it. The guy who owns the Commanders also owns the 76ers. So there's kind of like an open door situation, kind of like we have in Miami, just probably with a little bit better common sense, where, okay, that could be a possibility if you're asking, but I think that's already set up for Eric Bieniemy to be the next head coach. So I don't see Belichick moving to Washington where you bring in Bieniemy to be the next coach. I mean, it's almost like, hiring Sam Cassell to be an assistant coach if things don't go right with the Celtics, right? So I just can't fathom that there's going to be this 1-for-1 or a couple of things for a couple of things trade for Belichick services unless you're offering some type of ownership in the company.
Yeah, and the thing about Washington, too, is, and look, I believe Belichick is a much better coach than Rivera is as a head coach or Bieniemy would be, than
anybody in the league.
But if they finish the year close to the playoffs and Sam Howell continues to look good and looks like a franchise QB, they might not want to make a move. They might say, hey, we want Bieniemy working directly with Sam Howell as he grows, much like he did as Patrick Mahomes grew, and we want him to be the OC, and the only way he's going to be the OC is if we keep Ron Rivera as head coach. So that's another kind of – and look, as I said, Belichick would be an upgrade over Rivera, but if they really want their potential franchise QB to work specifically with Bieniemy, then they might not make a change because it might prevent that from happening.
So really what people are wanting to see is Belichick go somewhere where the team within the last 5 years has been bad enough to draft well and are still pretty bad to still have high picks to draft, right? And again, I try and get it across to people here in New England, like even when you go back to Sony Michel, he was like 28th in the first round, right? So when you're picking really below 21, you're a playoff team. You're a playoff team, and if you're always in that situation, you're not going to get the cream of the crop, and you're not going to spend a lot of money to go find gems in the rough because you believe you already have a system in place. And this is the other interesting thing, John, is if the game is moving Belichick by so badly, as some people are saying, then why are you willing? Why would any franchise be willing to give up whatever they want to get him?
Right. So I mean, yeah, if you don't think he's good anymore, why would you give up a couple first-round picks? But look, if I'm Bill, right, I only want to be traded to a team that can win the Super Bowl with me in year 1, year 2 max. Like, if I'm going to go to a team that's still up and coming, I might as well just stay and try to fix the Patriots, right? Like, because why would you go somewhere else, start all over with a team that still might not be really good for 2 or 3 more years? Like, that's the thing. The Chargers have the talent where if they just had better coaching and a better organization, they would be a contender to be in the AFC Championship game. Dallas, same thing, right? They just make stupid mistakes in the playoffs, it feels like, every year. But the talent is there to go deep in the playoffs. Like, that's the team. Like, that's why some people, they mention, would he want to go back to the Giants or Chicago? No, like, those teams are not going to be good for 2 or 3 more years. So to me, if I'm Bill, that's off the table for me. Like, I'm only going to a team where I can walk in and be a Super Bowl contender pretty quickly, which is why also with Washington, they're not on that level, but I think they're closer than some of the, like if Sam Howell ends up being the guy, they have some good pieces on offense. I know they traded Montez Sweat, and he just signed an extension with the Bears, by the way, and Chase Young, but they still have some good pieces on that defense. Cameron Curl's a really good safety. They have Jonathan Allen, Deron Pay. Like, they have some,
right.
If they can have a good offseason, and then you add a guy like Bill, okay, then maybe that can be a contender. But just some of these other teams, it just makes no sense, because why would he at age 72 want to start over for a team that's going to suck? You might as well just stay here and try to fix the Pats.
KJ and Lyons on WEEI, 617-779-7937. Text line 37937, 10 minutes away from the Lions Den. Plus, we still got Celtics to get to, hottest team in the NBA. That NBA tournament in Vegas, I'm still trying to figure out who is what. That's still to come here. So the other part is the knock on Bill's coaching tree. And I would say, and a lot of people know this, superstars tend to not have superstar children. Pete Rose Jr. never became Pete Rose, right? Frank Sinatra Jr. did not croon like Frank Sinatra Sr. And why would you expect that all of these people, because Belichick is still coaching, right, that these people to have some success? Really, if you would say if any of them have any area of success, it was Bill O'Brien doing a couple of years in Houston where they made the run for the playoffs, right?
Yeah, O'Brien had a winning record overall in Houston, I believe. And also, I would put Brian Flores in there. Like, winning seasons is back-to-back years. He never should have been fired. That was ridiculous. So, but the thing about that, KJ, too, like you make the point about, superstars don't have, like, superstar kids. Right. I think Flores and O'Brien, of all the Belichick coaching tree disciples that have gotten head coaching jobs, those are the two most independent-minded to me. And I think that's part of it, too. Like, Bill O'Brien did not start his career coaching with the Patriots. He came here, spent a lot of years here, but he was still an independent guy, went to college first, then the NFL, from Penn State to Houston. And Brian Flores, he was here for a long time, but it felt like he was more of an independent-minded guy. Even you can look, their defensive philosophy seemed to change quite a bit when Matt Patricia left and he took over, and I think he was a big part of that. And I think that's part of it, because I feel like Judge and Patricia and maybe even McDaniels, they go to these places and they just try to be little Bills, right? Like the old cartoon. They just try to be Bill clones, and that doesn't work if you're not the superstar that Bill is. Whereas if you're more independent-minded, then I think you have a little more success. Because really, to quote James Harden, Bill is the system, right? He's not like he is the system. And I think Brady, you can say that, like, they were the system, okay? And then there was everything else around them that helped elevate them. But, yeah, I just think, to me, getting Belichick coaching tree guys, independent-mindedness, if I'm a team, has to be huge for that, because Flores and O'Brien were the most independent guys, and I don't think it's a coincidence they had the most success.
Yeah, I think the other part of it is you have to realize what branch that Belichick is coming from, and that's Parcells, right? So if you look at the Charlie Weisses, the Eric Manginos, the guys that were closer to the earlier
Cornell,
days.
too.
Right, Cornell. Those guys had associations with Parcells as well. So even though they are part of that Belichick tree that kind of stunk some things up, Charlie Weiss did pretty good at Notre Dame and made some noise at Kansas for a second. But again, you cannot really produce, because if anything, Belichick is the superstar that Bill Parcells created, right?
Well, the thing about that, though, KJ, and I'm not trying to give Bill Parcells a stray here, but, I mean, Bill Parcells won 2 Super Bowls with Bill Belichick as DC and Lawrence Taylor coming off the edge.
Right.
Did he win another one after that? You know what I mean? I think so. Well, maybe they were again, Bill was the superstar in the system, and Bill and Lawrence Taylor, and then it was Bill and Tom Brady, right? And again, Parcells is a Hall of Fame coach. He's a great coach. But I think, that's part of it. These other guys around him have not had as much success when he hasn't been with them.
Yeah, I've heard people say, oh my gosh, if Josh McDaniels shows back up at Gillette and Patriot Way, it's going to be like the effort that Arcand put into his Halloween costume a couple days ago. Oh my God, really? You just put on some clothes that you had, and you're just saying you're your younger self? I just don't know if there's ever going to be that level of success when the master is still in the league, right? So when they talk about one of the greatest NFL coaching trees would be Bill Walsh for historians and Googlers, they forget that Bill Walsh stepped away from the game earlier. So the tree could grow without it still sucking up this is what is it called? The study of trees and plants. Botany? This is a little botany moment here on the show where Bill's still going to suck up those roots and the water because he's still in the game. You still have to game plan for him at some point. He's going to show up on your schedule. Now, I think with Josh McDaniels,
I'd be all in on him coming back, by the way.
Really?
All in. Yeah, 100%.
And you said O'Brien, or what does O'Brien go?
Yeah, it's a good look. That's a good. If I'm Bill O'Brien too, I might want to leave after this year and either be a head coach in college again or somewhere else in the NFL. But look, I think I would hope for him to come back this year as maybe an advisor, much like he did in the playoffs after the 2011 season, and then either be an advisor next year if O'Brien stays or take back over as the OC. Because look, McDaniels ran their offense for 14 years. They were top 10 in points 13 of those 14 years, including top 10 with Matt Castle and top 10 with Mac Jones.
But, John, that doesn't that feed into the narrative that if you believe it was all Brady, then you can bring all these guys back. If you don't bring back number 12, it doesn't matter who you bring back. At some point, you have to move the story forward.
Yeah, but I just said he was top 10 with Matt Castle and top 10 with Mac Jones. Tom Brady wasn't there, and he still got a top 10 offense with 2 other guys. That's why I would want him back. I wouldn't want him back just because he and Brady had great success. I also think he's a guy, great offensive coordinator, and I think we've seen pretty clearly, KJ, not really meant to be a head coach in the NFL.
Or could you see him as a head coach with Bill as his GM?
I don't know. I really don't. I think after
it's tough to chew, isn't it?
No, but after 2 failed head coaching stints, I don't know if he gets another shot, and I definitely don't think it's next year. If Bill's not the head coach next year, my choice number 1 is Brian Flores, but I think it'll be Gerard Mayer or Jim Harbaugh probably.
Well, it's got to be something offensive leaning, though, because that's been the problem. And if Bill's going to be stepping away, at least he would still be able to get the personnel he believes that can get it done on the field. I don't know how much coaching he'll be able to do. Maybe just sit in a film session, guys. But there's going to have to be someone that's going to have to bring the offense into the 22nd century. You know what I mean?
And I
it's got to move it forward.
If let's say, Gerard Mayer or Brian Flores is your head coach, if you have McDaniels as your OC, then I like that. Or if Jim Harbaugh is your head coach, you probably have a totally new operation. But Harbaugh is an offensive focused guy and has improved that Michigan offense over the last several years. So
has the heartbeat of people under 40, right?
Yeah, right. And even when Harbaugh was in San Francisco, to his credit, he made the move to sit Alex Smith, who was a playoff quarterback.
Right.
Brings in Colin Kaepernick. They go to the Super Bowl. They come a possession away from winning the Super Bowl.
Right.
And they were good essentially every year he was in San Francisco. They were good. So I think that would be a great choice if they were to move on. My number 1 would still be Brian Flores with a good OC in place, too.
It's KJ and Lyons on WEEI. Good Saturday to you. 617-779-7937. Text line 37937. Next, the Lions Den. Thanks for hanging out.